In the previous demo, we saw how we can create a realistic cloth simulation in Maya. In that demo, we had a passive collider, and the passive collider was static so that it didn't move and the fabric simply wrapped around it. In this demo, I'm going to show you how to animate a cloth using a passive collider that's in motion. If I play this animation, you will notice that the vertical column down the middle is rotating side to side and the cloth is responding to that motion. So let's start with a blank canvas in Maya. I'm going to go ahead and create a new polyplane. It is important that you have several subdivisions inside the polyplane, because if you don't have these subdivisions, you won't be able to deform the fabric realistically. Okay. Next, I'm going to go ahead and create an opening down the middle where we'll be attaching this fabric to the moving body. I'm going to delete this part. Next, I'm going to create the body or the passive collider. I'm going to go ahead and create polyprimitives cube, and I'm going to leave the subdivisions the way they are. So width, height, depth, that's all set to 1. That's the scale. And width divisions, height divisions, and depth divisions are all set to 5, and that's what I want. I'm going to go ahead and say create. And then I'm going to stretch this column vertically so that it somewhat resembles a human body. So once we have the column and the cloth or the plane, we need to define the plane as our end cloth and then the column as the passive collider. To make sure that you are in FX. If you are in animation or any of these other presets, you will not be able to access the end cloth option. So I'm going to select FX, select the fabric, then go to end cloth and then say create end cloth. Then I'm going to go ahead, click on the passive collider or the object that is going to be the passive collider. Once again, go to end cloth and then say create a passive collider. Okay. So now we have the cloth, we have the passive collider. If I play this animation right now, nothing will happen because the cloth doesn't collide with the object and it's not attached to the object either. So there is no interaction whatsoever between these two objects. And that's what we want to do next. We want to attach the cloth to the passive collider so that when the collider moves, when it animated, the cloth responds to that motion. So first, let's select the object, the passive collider, and with the collider is selected, so don't deselect it. With it selected, right click on the polyplane and then go to the vertex mode. So that way you have the main object or the passive collider selected, that's in the object mode, but the plane, the polyplane, that's in the vertex mode, which gives you access to all of its vertices. So now start selecting these vertices one by one. Okay, so I have all of these vertices selected and I have the passive collider selected. Then let's go to end constraint up here and select point to surface. Okay. And as soon as you make that selection, you notice that there are these green lines, these dotted lines that go from the polyplane to the object, indicating that now the polyplane has been attached to the passive collider. So now if we play this animation, you will notice that the top portion or the opening around the column stays where it is, and the rest of the object drops down, or the rest of the fabric drops down because it is responding to gravity. Okay. So next we go ahead and we animate this object and see how the cloth responds to that animation. So first of all, I'm going to go to frame 1 and then hit the key S, which will set a keyframe. Then go to frame 20, rotate the object, rotate the passive collider, and then hit the key S again. Then go to frame 40, rotate it in the opposite direction, set a keyframe, and then do that a couple more times just so that we get to see the animation clearly once the fabric drops down. Go to, and now let's play this animation and see what happens. Right, so there you go. The object begins to rotate, the fabric responds to it, it twirls around with the object. Now this is just the beginning. All I want to show you in this demo is how to connect an object to the passive collider, and then how do you animate the collider so that the object begins to deform with it. Now, if you have a complex character with realistic clothes, you will have to begin with something like this, but then you will have to tweak this animation further using the various attributes, or by working with the various attributes and properties that come with a fabric in Maya. Uh, I'm not going to go into these properties right now in this demo. I'll create another demo for that, and then we can take a simple animation and tweak these properties to see how these various attributes influence the final animation.